to the new era. This is Formula One in 2026, a season like no other. The rule book has been torn up completely. It gives us an unpredictable sporting championship. Hello, good afternoon, and welcome back to F1 live on your TV. You are very much in the right place for the next hour. It is the final hour of Test 1, Day 1, and in the commentary box, I'm Alex Jakes, and I must say, I am delighted to be joined by my old friend. Formula One has reinvented itself yet again.
And I'm so watching this new era of Formula One car take to the track for the first time live on camera. It's one of, if not the most significant regulation changes we've seen in Formula One over many, many seasons. And it's taken to the track here in Bahrain. We're getting a sense of these cars for the first time with live pictures.
Yeah, the sheer novelty of seeing Formula One cars out on the circuit at a very, very early stage indeed. And welcome to Formula One Cadillac.
I'm scared
They
this could be
introduced themselves with an advert during the Super Bowl on Sunday, a distinctive livery, and Formula One's 11th team. That's going to take a little bit of getting used to, isn't it? 11 teams on the grid this year.
Well, it does take a bit of getting used to. F1's first start-up team for a decade. Cadillac, and what a challenge they have in front of them. As you say, dropped the livery with some aplomb, didn't they, in the middle of the Super Bowl. It's going to be so interesting to see how F1's newest American team gets on this.
We've got 58 minutes with you under the floodlights of Bahrain International, circuit that runs to 5.4 kilometers. I want to show you the action from the day so far, though, because they have been out there for 7 hours. We begin with Gabriel Bortoleto fighting it into the first corner, and at the 10th corner, his teammates struggling to slow it down as well.
Yeah, so indicative of what we've seen throughout the day so far, and all of these little moments are really give you a sense of F1's new generation, the challenges for the drivers behind the steering wheel. We have seen stoppages so far today, some reliability issues, and a sprint for Lewis Hamilton down in turn 1 also characterised the morning of the first day.
Yeah, bumps down there into turn number 1. Hamilton able to keep going. This is turn 10. Again, fighting the car. The cars are more lively from the pictures that we have seen before coming on air today. This is Charles Leclerc going deep into the first turn.
It's really interesting to watch the cars out there. There are a couple of things that really jump out. Difficulties under braking the first, and indeed the cars being more lively underneath the drivers. There are a couple of reasons for that we'll get into a little bit later on. Franco Colapinto found himself stopped behind the racetrack a little earlier on as well in his Alpine. But it's a totally new era of Formula One racing. So many regulation changes, Jakesy, and so much to understand and explore.
Yeah, there is a lot to take you through, and if you're joining us for the final hour of testing, I know that you will have got yourself up to speed, but let's reiterate what we've got underneath us after we've had a quick look at Kimi Antonelli, first of all, with this distinctive wide turn-in that he showed. He's beginning his second season in Formula One in Melbourne. Big kick as he went through turn number 4.
Regulations change, Kimi Antonelli does not. I remember standing out there and watching him do exactly the same thing in testing last year. Likes that wide line. Down into turn 4, and again, that characteristic oversteer of the new era of car.
Okay, let's take you through the new era of Formula One, sort of section by section, if you like, beginning with the rules and regulations for the power unit, Alex. Big changes here.
So approximately a 50-50 split between the power generated now by the combustion engine and electric power. That's up to 350 kilowatts. What does that represent? About 470 horsepower at maximum. That is a Ferrari F40. Only from the electric motors, the MG UK of the car.
I love a Brundle reference. But I think it's so important. So that's up from the electrical power, up from about 20%. Now a close to 50-50 split, but that is a huge amount of power available to the drivers. How they use it, absolutely vital for who succeeds this year.
It really is, and that is an interest of this era of the regulations, because you have a massively powerful electric motor and a much bigger battery, but you really have the ability to throw a lot of power down on the racetrack all at once. Cars, of course, running on 100% sustainable fuels as well, and that power managed all the way through the curve to make sure that teams and drivers are 50-50, or as close to 50-50 as they can be, through the range of speeds and the range of throttle delivery.
Yeah, the sustainable fuel from biomass or synthetic industrial processes being used by the teams. We're looking at a phrase now that you're going to hear a lot about this year: boost. Listed as boost mode there, and the driver, it's a tool that the driver can use at all times, and it's worth differentiating between overtake and boost. We'll start with boost.
So there are a sequence of rules and regulations, again, which we'll get into, about how you can recharge and how you can deliver battery power. But essentially within that group of regulations, drivers can pretty much do whatever they want in the car in terms of boosting, choosing to use all of the power for a moment, maybe to attack or defend their position, or indeed recharging, which we'll get onto in a few minutes, to allow them to do so. So this is a tool available all the time to the teams to use strategically to battle over their position, but sits within the parameters that they're allowed to use lap on lap.
And then Charles down to turn number one. We'll take you through all the new aspects of Formula One in 2026 across the next hour. Now, I mentioned boost and overtake as well. Now, this is going to be a crucial aspect for Formula One this year. Overtake mode, overtake in the regulations, the replacement for DRS.
It really is. It's allowed when a driver is within 1 second of the driver ahead at the detection point in race conditions. And the difference between overtake and boost is boost happens within the lap by lap parameters that are allowed by the regulations. Overtake is a separate step, so it's a different equation in terms of how the electric power specifically is allowed to be delivered by the cars. It allows the drivers to have a little bit more power for a little bit longer in the aid of promoting overtake.
So overtake the detection point, single detection point, which you can find around this circuit between turn 14 and 15. Fine, to simplify it, nice and easy for you. 52 minutes left to go in the session, a session that is topped by Lando Norris, who's done a 1:34.6, and it's time for your first caveat that it's only testing, and it's really mileage and understanding the car that matters more than anything else out there, as we have come on air to start a brand new pre-season. I'm going to tell you the track temperature is 26 degrees and the air temperature is 26 as well, as we continue to focus on Charles Leclerc in the distinctive Ferrari for this year, with its sort of 1970s throwback with the white on the engine cover to evoke the days of Niki Lauda winning championships for the team. Let's go downstairs to the pit lane for the first time in 2026 and say happy new season to Ted Kravitz. Hi, Ted.
Hello, Alex and Alex. Yes, happy new season to you. Don't tell me it's just testing. This is fantastic. Gone are the breezy days of Barcelona, and we're back in boiling Bahrain. The shorts are out. 26 degrees. It was 29 earlier today. I've been here since 7 a.m. and just about to go out are Red Bull Racing, because this is the team that's really come here and actually taken the opportunity, taken the initiative, and been quickest through most of the day, most of the sunny day. Max Verstappen was here even earlier than I was, because he was first out in his Red Bull Racing RB22 Ford engine car. He was first out and has really taken this test session into his own hands. He was quickest for most of the day, that time only beaten by Lando Norris just recently, but this car looks well suited to this Bahrain circuit. But what about Mercedes, I hear you say? Well, they've had, whether they've taken out the sandbags from the car and just slowed themselves down or not, we don't know, because they haven't looked as dialed in as the McLaren and as the Red Bull here in Bahrain. Kimi Antonelli has just had an issue that's just been fixed in his car and is out on track. The Ferrari's been okay, but only in these these nighttime conditions, while Lewis Hamilton was saying that it just didn't behave at all how he wanted to in the the wind of the early session in the daytime, and then the heat and the sand of Bahrain as well. You've seen the Cadillac out on track, mostly locking brakes. Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez. There's been lots of lockups as they've been trying to understand the recharge of their car going through the rear axle. And then we've also seen, Alex and Alex, almost a brand new car. We're waiting to see the Audi, and then it turns up, we think, hello, that looks different. Completely different side pods on the Audi, as they were fooling us maybe with the car that they had in the Barcelona shakedown. That's not what they've come to Bahrain with. Almost looks like a different car. So yeah, plenty going on, and we'll pick out some other stories for you up and down the pit lane. It looks like Verstappen is on his way out again onto the track.
I'm sure there is going to be plenty going on, and there is almost a 0% chance that the cars that we see here are going to be the cars that arrive in Melbourne. Such is the evolution of these machines as they go through the testing process. A car that we didn't see, Jakesy, at the Barcelona shakedown over 5 days, and is making its debut here at official testing, is of course this Williams. 0 laps completed before they arrived here in Bahrain in official testing editions. Anyway, it's good to see it out on track.
It is indeed a chastening moment for the Williams team to miss the shakedown, given that for the last couple of years, over and over and over again, we have heard from every single person from the team, but of course the most from team principal James Vowles, how their focus has been this year, but they have been running on track today. That is our look at a car that will have a Mercedes power unit. Much talked about Mercedes power unit for this year, and after the surprise podiums for Carlos Sainz last year, they'll be hoping to turn that into a regular fixture, albeit, Alex, as you say, from the back foot, having missed a shakedown in Barcelona, where teams were allowed to run for 3 of the 5 days that the circuit was booked for. Let's get now to recharge. So recharging and take everyone through the battery and how it can be recharged.
Again, this is something that the teams and drivers can do at any time. It looks complex, it looks like there's a lot of ways to do it, but really there are actually only 2. You're turning the energy of the wheels as the car moves along into battery charge by either using the MG UK to brake, or indeed lifting and coasting and putting that energy into the motor generator unit, the MG UK, in the back of the car, or you are using more engine power than you need to, or more engine power than the driver is asking for, and putting the surplus into the battery. So under braking, you're slowing it down. Overloading the throttle in corners, you're picking up part throttle, the engine's doing the rest, and putting that into the battery. Lifting off early, you're slowing it down, putting that energy into the battery, and then the super clip, as they're calling it, at the end of the straight, which is where effectively you stay on throttle to the end of the straight, and the engine is putting surplus energy into the battery. So we're going to get used to all of it. One to watch out for this year, in terms of recharging, those flashing lights, the regeneration lights on the back of the car, the harvesting lights, tell you when a driver is pumping energy into that battery. Blimey, let's move on to active error. Is your pencil sharp? Are you sitting comfortably?
It is very much a strange hybrid between live pictures and running through everything that we are trying to take you through rule-wise. This is the most obvious one that we're going to see on track. Active error, something that we've been used to with DRS, but now it's both front and rear wing, and I will hand over to you for this, and then we'll explain where it applies around this race.
So around the racetrack there are areas which are noted by signboards by the side of the track. They are the straight mode areas. That's the vernacular for it. And in those areas, teams are allowed to open up the front and the rear wing. Reduces the drag of the car, lets the car go faster in those straight mode areas. So both the front and the rear wing will open, and then effectively that's available to all the teams at all times. Looks a lot like DRS, has nothing to do with previous DRS whatsoever. That's available on every straight mode zone, on every lap. It's going to be a really interesting area of development for the teams, but that's just part of what a Formula One car looks like when it laps a circuit these days.
Yeah, so 4 zones around this racetrack have been designated for straight mode, and then it returns to corner mode to provide all the grip, all the downforce required. You were looking at the Audi of Nico Hülkenberg. That's the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. We now move to the Cadillac. And you can see, once you get to the end of the zone, the wings, the elements returning to their high drag configuration. This does change if we get wet weather conditions. There are reduced zones, and they've been doing their work on this. They've even marked out on our track map the reduced zones in case we got a sprinkling of rain like we did last year. So this can be managed by race control, but the front wing and the rear wing elements closing in synchronicity for corner mode and straight mode, and we're cycling through all the teams to show you, because there's slightly different designs on the rear wing about how this is achieved.
There are slightly different designs, and this is a key difference from the usage of DRS. So we're used to that system you can see on the Aston Martin there, the slot gap opening in the rear wing. But when we take a look at the Alpine, we can actually see that rather than opening that slot gap, the rear wing lays back away from the top plane of the rear wing, lays back away from the main plane. So there are extra ways that they are allowed to actuate that rear wing. The type of actuator, very similar to the one previously used. Actuation of the front wing can be done from near the end plates, in the middle, or near the nose. They've got a choice of how they do that. And then, of course, we're seeing a lot of interesting designs to try to maximise both modes. The feel of this, or the concept of this, is still that teams are going to be moving up and down the downforce ranges. It's just in general making the cars more efficient, and of course assisting teams and drivers with their energy management around the circuit as well.
We're cycling through the differences between last year, all of 66 days ago, and Formula One in 2026. You're watching the first live hour of broadcast testing this year in the company of Alex Brundle and me, Alex Jakes. Wherever you're watching, great to have your company. We're taking you through, I think we've got one left. That's about it. These cars are looking great on track though, gotta say. It really does seem to be a more alive car from the pictures that we've seen in the opening minutes of this session.
They look truly aggressive, don't they? And a lot of the drivers have commented actually that the cars do feel more nimble. So they're 200 millimeters shorter, 100 millimeters narrower, and can be 30 kilos lighter. Front tyres in the slick usage are 25 millimeters narrower, slightly shorter as well, less diameter to the tyre. The rear tyres are 30 millimeters narrower. So not only are the cars lighter, but they're going to feel more agile because they're shorter and they have a little bit less unsprung mass. What do I mean by that? I mean the tyres weigh less, basically. So imagine you've got a ballerina spinning on the ice. They put their arms out wide and they spin at a certain speed. They bring their arms to their chest, they spin at a quicker speed, or rotate at a quicker speed. So when you have a shorter wheelbase, the car rotates a little bit better, and especially when you bring that center, that mass in towards the center of mass, they rotate a little bit better as well. Shorter wheelbase cars also have less far to go. If you imagine drawing a circle from the rear wing towards the front tyres. So we've seen cars snapping all over the place so far in the test, and they look to be a little bit more agile and flighty as well. That added to the fact they have significantly less downforce chasing than they've had in previous years. So the cars looking a little bit more flighty and controllable and spiky actually on occasion, particularly in this section of the racetrack through turns 6 and 7 down towards 8 for the drivers.
And you're watching Max Verstappen, who has changed his number from the last time that he wasn't running number 1, which we've become accustomed to in recent times. He's now, with the permission of former holder Daniel Ricciardo, driver number 3 on our grid. Here's driver number 10, Pierre Gasly. Always goes well around this circuit, continuing with the Alpine team. And that, in what turned out to be 20 minutes, plus a Tech Rabbits update, is a whistle-stop tour across the changes for 2026. It's one of those things where there is a lot of change. We're going to get used to it really, really quickly because that's always the speed of it. But I think the opening races are going to be really interesting for the different dynamics, especially the energy management it's going to cause. I I think we're going to have such an unpredictable start to this season.
You know, it sounds really complicated when we tell you all at once, but effectively you have a great big battery and a very powerful motor generator unit. It's a lot of the performance of the car. This kind of stuff has been happening. Where you can see, look, the Alpine rear wing and the difference of the way it actuates. This sort of stuff has been happening in Formula One over past seasons. This regeneration of energy and the deployment of energy. Now it's just walked into the centre stage because the performance of these cars is going to be so reliant on their energy management. Just braking and maybe lift and coasting, we're told, is not going to be enough to regenerate the amount of energy that these cars are needing to regenerate, even to maintain a balanced battery in that you spend the same amount of battery as you are using through a lap. So teams are going to have to get clever with how they're using the combustion engine, the way the drivers are driving, and everything else to do with these cars to make sure the energy management is there. Going to be a key way that they manage the car strategically.
So that's the setup for this season and the massive technical regulation, changing the power unit, changing the chassis at the same time for many, many people. The biggest ever regulation changes that we have seen. 38 minutes to go, current fastest driver is the world champion, Lando Norris, who has been saying in plenty of pre-season interviews that he's still getting used to hearing that. And he's loving seeing number one on the car and around the garage as well. He's ahead of Verstappen, then it's Leclerc, Piastri and George Russell, the top five. Next up on your screen, Esteban Ocon. And actually, let's go back to McLaren because Ted is standing by down there in the pit lane.
Thank you very much, Alex. Right, things that you didn't know were going to change, or maybe didn't realise before you actually got here. Numbers 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, 9, and 10. First of all, new tyre blankets. Now, I know this seems silly, but the tyres have changed, so everybody needs new tyre blankets. Secondly, how you change your front wing angle. And a couple of teams have got this. A couple of the McLaren mechanics have helpfully stood in the way, but I think I can show you. If you have a look on the top of the McLaren nose, look for the DeWalt logo, you can see a little hole. Now that actually goes to the two steel struts that go down underneath the W of that Arrow logo. And can you see the two little steel struts? They change the front wing flap angle. Now it has to be there, of course, because that's the way the actuator actually pushes the front wing flap down when you've got the active aero. So they've got this solution down here at McLaren. Mercedes have got something similar. Red Bull have got something similar. But it's really interesting because when the guys come in, maybe if we go head on, we can see it. Here we go, look, the mechanic is about to change. He's about to get the instruction for how much to change the front wing angle, and then he'll go with his gun and put it in that little hole and change the front wing angle that way. So something where we've been used to seeing either side of the front wing main flap and by the end plate. No, it's central now, and it also saves a bit of weight. And just while we're looking at the car straight on, Alex and Alex, this shows you how much narrower they've got. If you have a look at these blue stickers either side of the front wheel, they're last year's sponsor stickers. And last year, the front tyres were on those stickers. Now look at it, it's shrunk because the cars are so much narrower. Then you've got the front tyres that are actually on the, well inside those stickers, that gauge, if you like, of last year. There are more things, many more things to be shown to you on this McLaren, not least the rearwards leg of the front suspension. It's quite difficult to see when Lando's in the car and they're actually ready to go now. But the more you see on these cars, the more interesting little things you notice. But the world champion looks about ready. Various adjustments being made. We'll see him back on track very soon.
Thank you, Ted. Appreciate the update. And Ted's always at his happiest at the start of testing. He's poking around the garage, trying to see the differences. But the change in the angle of the front wing, that's always been at the start. That's from ever. since I've been watching.
I
It's
love
always
that
been at the
detail.
side.
I love that detail. I tell you what, whoever has to lean across the front of the McLaren and change that front wing angle in a pit stop's going to be angling for a pay rise, aren't they? Well, at the beginning of the year, it's going to be interesting to see how they actually choose to do that one. As we let's follow Sergio Perez down towards turn 1 and just see what this is all about. You see the charge mode go on. So the offshoot of these regulations, and you're allowed to put 8.5 megajoules worth of charge in per lap. So that is a hard lap limit when you're in the normal mode. When you're in the overtake mode, you get the overtake mode, it goes up to 9. But the offshoot is, if you want to set an all-out lap, there's going to be a lot of charging to do. That's one of 2 rules around the battery and its charge specifically. The other one is a state of charge delta limit. So down on pits, you recharge up to 4 megajoules. You're allowed to stay between, let's say you went out of pits with 0, you wouldn't, but for the state of this, let's say you would. You recharge up to 4, you're allowed to stay between 0 and 4 at all times. At all times when you're on track. So that's the regulation we have. Those 2 regulations govern the usage of the battery. But there's going to be a lot more of that kind of recharging going on in qualifying. It's going to be a huge factor who's got charge in the battery. It's going to massively affect the way that they deliver their charge, I think, throughout the qualifying hour.
Let's formally welcome Audi to Formula 1, shall we? We see Nico Hülkenberg out on track with a couple of lockups, a wide moment at turn 10, a wide moment at turn 1, and he was pulling over to the side of the track about an hour ago or so. He's back out there, and the German driver getting this factory drive, many linked to it in the previous guise of Sauber, but now after much talked about, and I feel like we were talking about the team turning into Audi for such a long time, that it's terrific that they are finally here. Distinctive livery, and as Ted was telling us earlier on, very distinctive side pods compared to what we saw for Shakedown in Barcelona. The imagery released by the team themselves. And now let's ride on board and listen in to Nico Hülkenberg.
So a couple of things really jumping out, aren't they? What a great chance to sit on the airbox there for Nico Hülkenberg. You see those keen downshifts, all of that energy of the engine revving going then into the battery to help charge it up. The slight lift and coast on his way down into the slower corners. That'll be all about power unit management as well. And the eagle eyes amongst you will have seen the shift lights down the front straight, Hülkenberg hard in it, and then actually the car into a recharge mode as he made his way towards the end of the straight there. All of that, the power unit management, what you could see from the movement of Hülkenberg's hands was the change in the way these cars behave in terms of the reduction in their downforce and also the wheelbase, which is what's generating that kind of snappy oversteer for Hülkenberg. I think we're going to have a look at it off board. I watched Lewis Hamilton a little bit earlier on in the Ferrari and thought, blimey, that thing's really, really struggling. Then watched the rest of the cars and realised that it's a factor of this generation of car. And the drivers commented on it, didn't they, after Barcelona. The cars are moving around a lot more. Lando Norris mentioned that the car has a significant amount less downforce. Certainly feels like it has a significant amount less downforce than previous generations. So truly fascinating to see the new gen.
Did you see Fernando Alonso's response to that? where he had the most downforce to lose. So of course it feels like a big step back for him. Enjoyed that for Fernando Alonso, who is enjoying an Adrian Newey design car for the first time in his career this year, as he continues to extend the record of the longest ever Formula One career length. And we're watching Lando Norris for the first time with car number 1 in his possession, winning at the title decider in Abu Dhabi 66 days ago, and we're now on board with him.
291 laps achieved by McLaren during the Barcelona shakedown across their days. Fuel system issue hindered their second day of running. Lando Norris, of course, driving out of the pit lane for the first televised session with the number 1 on the car, JC, which will be a great source of pride for him. Good look here, by the way. Sorry to dive directly back into tech chat. I was warned.
You do whatever you like, Alex. This is Christmas morning stuff, isn't it? We're seeing the cars on track. It's a brand new technical regulation set. We've got a new team. We've got a new driver running this week. We've got a new circuit joining the calendar, and this is the sort of thing that in the past was only available when you got to the first round of the year. So let's revel in it. You go in any direction you like, sir.
It's nice of you to give me an hour, and I do appreciate it. The part with the McLaren logo on it there is a regulatory part for this year. And it's quite interesting because you get so used to Formula One teams trying to optimise every part on the car. The part with the McLaren logo on it on the side of the car sits behind the front wheel there. That is, to all intents and purposes, a reverse barge board. So what you would tend to do is, wheels are horrible things to push through the air. It's an absolute aerodynamic disaster. They generate something called outwash. And what a barge board would normally do is put that horrible turbulent air around the side of the car, so you can have nice clean air under the floor. The slight issue with that, from a regulatory perspective, is it ruins the performance of the car behind you, and makes it very difficult for cars to follow and very difficult for cars to overtake. So they've come up with that barge board concept for this year, which in fact effectively does the opposite. It makes the outwash from the front wheel head underneath the car that it's being generated by, thus having hopefully a lesser effect on the car that is following it. Consequently, though, they were given an area that board has to be in and an angle that board must be at. It's got the keeper logo on it there with Williams. And you're in this really interesting situation where all the F1 teams are trying to make that part function as badly as possible and reduce its effect on the outwash of the front wheels of the car. So there you go. Is that my last one? Is that all I can have?
No, you can have as many as you like before now and the end of the session, because there are so many key differences from last year to this year. Alex Albon behind the wheel of the Williams, and good news for that brand, that they've sponsored the right part of the car that you were referencing about. As we go down into turn 10, and plenty of tricky moments from trackside observers at turn 10. That always seems to be the way, but it is striking, certainly from these angles. We are no longer brushing the floor in the way that we were. The cars have been raised up, they're running a lot of rake, so it's not a flat plane from the front of the car to the rear of the car. And as a result, there's a steep angle in there as well, which we were used to before the previous regulations, which came in 2022.
And we haven't seen the driver's head rattling about, which I think is a good development as well, because we heard through the middle of last year and indeed the end of last year that it was making the drivers really, or that the whole era of car had made the drivers really quite uncomfortable. We're not seeing that kind of porpoise bouncing anymore, and that is because the floor is simply not operating in that way anymore, and that's what's changing the behaviour of the cars. This Williams, I love the quote from James Vowles after they didn't quite make the shakedown, which is, we acknowledged that we were trying to push more throughput through the system than we were able to achieve, otherwise known as it wasn't possible.
The translation service as well, for press releases. We're getting all the brand.
I only do the megajoules today, Jake. I only do the megajoules.
That was Pierre Gasly making his way through turn 13. This is where the overtake detection point is after this point of the circuit. As you make your way through, that will be a delineated yellow line for the rest of the year, so you won't have to have that vague description from me for the rest of the season. It will be nice and obvious when we get to the first round of the World Championship. Gasly making his way through the first two turns. Gasly currently finding himself ninth in the classification. The order doesn't mean much today, but he's done 40 laps, and that is important. As much mileage as possible. And there's always a fear with a brand new regulation set that you'd see previous scenes at the notorious Jerez test many years ago, where there was barely any running. That was not the case in the shakedown, and it has not been the case today. Max Verstappen's done 128 laps, currently second fastest. He's been in the car all day long. Isaac Padre, you can see, not taking part. Different allocations of how teams decide this, as Gasly has another one for the collection of lockups at turn 10. Some drivers, some teams splitting the difference between drivers, and some drivers deciding to get out there as early as possible to get the 4J. That's what the four-time world champion has done, Max Verstappen. Meanwhile, you've got the likes of Lando Norris splitting the time in the car with Oscar Piastri. Back on board Gasly heading to turn 10.
So turn 10, a real example here as we listen to Gasly get the downshifts in all early, which would normally move the brake bars rearwards. But this is going to be the other factor of these cars. They're super snappy in the mid-corner because of everything we've discussed. But also there's so much regeneration of energy going on because the battery power is so dominant, and all that regeneration is done through the MG UK now only. The rear axle. So all of that energy must come from the rear tyres. That in a section of the circuit like that, the rear brakes are essentially redundant. You're slowing the rear axle down with the energy system only. So getting that tuned is really, really tricky. That's why we're seeing these lockups, and we've been seeing them all day long, because if you have too much regeneration, you'll lock the rear brakes. You get too much recharge. If you have too little, you will lock the front brakes, because you'll ask the front to do too much of the work. So they're actively tuning that system to make it absolutely right. And this is exactly the sort of thing we see at the beginning of testing.
Are you getting a comparison from the graphics department? Charles Leclerc in third, Lando Norris in first. Just a reminder for you, if you're one of our newer viewers, if you've fallen in love with Formula One in recent times, testing times are to be taken with a pinch of salt. And realistically, we will have our guesses at the order. Will we? Well, maybe not. We might make some comments too.
Yeah, I think we'll get Salmon at the end to do that, because it really is.
It's a hiding to nothing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a total hiding to nothing. What matters is lap count here, because they've got a lot of systems to set up. It's a complex car in terms of the management of the system. So the teams you see pounding around are the teams that are going to be gathering that data. It's the how to run the car bit that's really tricky in F1 2026. You know, the cars, in terms of the complexity of the power units, have actually become more simple. The MGUH is gone, and so it's the setup, the management. So that's why these laps in testing are more important than ever as Charles Leclerc heads out for a few more.
Yeah, the MGUH used to recover energy from turbo. That has gone. Reason for it being removed, expensive, and a lack of road relevancy was the reason given behind it. It gives us our two units of the power unit, the internal combustion engine, much discussed over the winter, and the now providing nearly 50%, very nearly a 50-50 split with the electrical power, which is the equivalent of what road car, Alex?
A Ferrari F40.
Absolutely love it. Absolutely, just a perfect example, perfect thing for everyone to picture at home of how much is available from the electrical energy of the rule set this year in Formula One.
I'm I'm tragic enough that I didn't have to look that up
I don't doubt it.
either. So
I don't doubt it.
it's a great it's a great big change for them. The reduction in the power of the combustion engine unit has been achieved through a reduction in the boost pressure, and also a limitation of the fuel flow and the compression ratio. If you are a real engine keynote like me,
I wonder what phrase you were going to use there.
yes,
Because I knew you were going to be in the bracket as well. So I was like, let's see. I thought you were going to go for aficionado, but it worked. It was good.
Aficionado would have been way more that's more complimentary than I can afford to be about myself on air.
From a driver's point of view, Alex, there's a lot to do behind the wheel. And taking these cars to the limit is going to be fascinating to me when we get to qualifying in Australia, because the task list now behind the wheel that was already at the pinnacle of motor racing and compete against the best drivers in the world has just got longer, much longer.
So you've got a split in terms of the driver's workload. A degree of this energy management can be automated, but that's part of the driver's workload too, because you've got to work with a team and they need to understand what you need. Then there's the bit on track where you divert from it, which means you've got to understand what everything does and react situationally to what's going on around you, whether you have overtake mode available or you do not have overtake mode available, and then to maximise those things. You've also got to move in and out of straight mode, you can see there for Kimi Antonelli, and understand how that affects everything else. So there is a vast workload now for the drivers to understand with a car that moves around like that.
Perfect illustration. We heard it and backing out of it immediately. Right, let's go down to Ted, who's looking at Alex Albon.
And in all amongst it, the pit stops are still going to be as important as they ever were. So Williams catching up for lost time, practicing their pit stops. They've just done a very good... This is fascinating. Listen to this. This is all about getting the turbo to spin up. So we're going to hear, and I've been hearing all day, some weird and wonderful noises, especially when the drivers have been making a practice getaway. They're revving the engines so much higher than we normally have. When you get to see and hear some practice starts, Alex and Alex, later in this test, it'll just blow your mind. We're hearing all sorts of weird noises from the engine, as of course the MGU-H is gone and they're having to drive up the turbo, to rev up the turbo. But let's just have a look at this Williams as it's gone in. Some lovely details. Look at this little winglet, this L-shaped winglet on the front wing end plate. Nobody else has that. There's some lovely detail to the back. And Williams have been well and truly making up for lost time. 77 laps, more or less a race distance, well, over a race distance for Carlos Sainz. And Alex Albon is approaching that target now. So I think Williams doing some race simulations, doing some long run work, just getting the driver to be fully in practice with the recharge modes and all the regen where it's coming in, and then trying some overtake modes. I'm sure they would have been giving a boost or two just to see what it's like, but it's getting the driver used to the engineering modes that they're going to have to keep the battery energy level throughout the race. Albon is getting to grips with it. Sainz has already had the day, so good recovery. And James Vowles, the team boss here at Williams, Alex, saying that he is sure, because I think we've got a car conked out at the end of the pit lane. I'm going to run down to see what's going on with that. James Vowles saying that he's sure that Williams can catch up with the mileage they lost from Barcelona. No, all okay, just a practice start. So I'll head back into the paddock and return you to the last 15 minutes or so on track.
Thank you, Ted. We will be hearing from James Vowles later on as we wrap things up at the end of day one of pre-season testing. The days in Barcelona were a shakedown. This is test one of pre-season. You're watching the final hour of it. We've only got 16 minutes left. How has this happened? I'm thoroughly enjoying this. Trying to balance the necessary degree of broadcasting required from the sheer joy of seeing cars back out on track again, and there's only 16 minutes to go. Kimi Antonelli having a wild adventure of a time out there. We heard him nearly lose it through 2 and 3. and deep into turn 10.
What I loved about watching Kimi Antonelli out there last year, in exactly this session, actually, the final part of the first day of testing, is there were, whatever the parameters that he'd been given, whether it was on old tyres, new tyres, whatever, it was flat out. The full test was flat out. And I wondered if it was the exuberance of a driver early in his career. Clearly it's not. Clearly it's just the way he tests, which is great to watch as well. Charles Leclerc, I think there was a practice start at the end of the pit lane. Start's going to be tricky this year. There's a speed limit on when they can start bringing in the electric power. So a lot of the early phase of the starting process is gonna have to be on the combustion engine and the turbo, which I think is a lot of what the strange noises that Ted's referring to are. As you hear Charles Leclerc make his way through there, and it's something really to watch out for this year is that there will be elements, there will be corners on all circuits where the cars sound like they're on full throttle, but they aren't. And it's the way that these F1 cars are working, where the driver is bringing in the throttle in, the way they recharge it, the driver's bringing the throttle in, and a degree of that full beams revving is just going straight into the battery to be used later.
Continuing on with Charles Leclerc, fighting the car through turn 10, but it is going to change the feel of watching Formula One and listening to Formula One when, certainly at the start, if the revs are going to be as high as we expect and we've had reported to us, it's going to be a different sound entirely as we make our way through 11, 12, and now on our way to turn 13.
Stuff being done manually there from Leclerc on the left-hand side of the steering wheel, straight mode open. A little bit of flow viz. The challenge for teams as well is that alongside this huge rate change, they've still got to do all the things they normally do, like flow viz, for example, the diffuser, and make sure that is working as efficiently as it can do. Aerodynamic change this year, the beam wing goes away. That's the second element of the wing that we're used to seeing. So effectively that top element of the wing would last year have a second part to it. Not allowed to use those anymore. There's a fascinating tweak to the Aston Martin that we haven't seen much of yet. A lovely Newey special on the back of it, where the top of the rear suspension sits conveniently close to where the rear beam wing used to sit. On the previous iteration of car, has caught the eyes of some.
Adrian Newey cars into new regulation sets. 1998, absolutely dominant with the McLaren. 2009, didn't believe the double diffuser was a thing that was going to be legal. When they were eventually allowed to do it, that car by the end of the year was the fastest car. And then obviously went on that run of winning 4 titles in a row with Sebastian Vettel. He's got form, along with all those trophies on his shelf at home. He's got form of reading the regulations correctly, at least by the end of the season, and that is the hope for Aston Martin, who were late, weren't they? They were late to the shakedown that we had. Appeared at the end, didn't even have time to paint the car. That shows you how late in the day the assembly was. But there was a real feeling from that team of a huge collective sort of outpouring of joy, really, that they'd managed to make the shakedown, that they've gone all full commitment, huge amount of hours worked, and of course it's been a quick turnaround. So we've had these dramatic regulations. For the power unit, that's changed. The chassis, that's changed as well. As you've said, Alex, got to go through all the normal pre-season procedures. The car build as well, and they had to get it done by the final week of January. Aston Martin managed it. Of course, we spoke about Williams, who worked there before. Can I do a little bit of typical testing, just very, very quickly? Esteban Ocon given a very, very public holiday by his team principal around that car launch. I thought that was quite unusual.
It really was. It speaks in some way to him, but I think it also speaks to Oliver Behrman, who had actually, I think, a really good end to last season. And the comparison was made, wasn't it, between he and Behrman. New regulation set, means totally new form book as well for me. We got a shot a few minutes ago of Isaac Hadjar standing on the pit wall there, and as he came into shot, I thought, what an opportunity he's got moving into what is formally, I think, reasonably well accepted as the most difficult seat in Formula One, sat across from Max Verstappen. Now, Max jumps in a GT3 car around the Nürburgring and delivers. He jumps in simulators all over the world and delivers every iteration of Formula One car. To suggest that he's not going to be up to speed and excellent in this generation of F1 car is for the birds. But there's more of a chance for Hadjar than when he was already established in the last regulation set, isn't there?
And he admitted that. He was like, because there was speculation about it not particularly working with Yuki Tsunoda, who's off the grid this year. And he said, yeah, I'm happy with the chance of promotion just at the end of the year. Because he's seen so many good drivers go in there, including this man, who had outstanding talent since he's joined Williams, but just get blown away by one of the greatest to ever do it in Max Verstappen. Just to finish on the exact quote that Io Komatsu, team principal of Haas, gave about Esteban Ocon, he said he expected more and anticipates more of a contribution during 2026. Sometimes with the Lynches, you get a few ambiguous quotes. No ambiguity there towards the driver that is a Grand Prix winner and was beaten in the championship by Ollie Behrman 1 year ago. That's sometimes the spiciest thing to come out of the team launches, I think.
I wonder if he said welcome back before or afterwards.
But you're looking at me like, no, you think that's spicy between team principal and driver?
No,
you're giving me a knowing look across the country.
It's a very early hurry up before you've really sort of done too much of a lap in it.
Esteban Ocon's done 109 laps in the Haas today. Two American teams on the grid in 2026, Cadillac and Haas. And Cadillac running, we've seen on track in this session with Sergio Perez.
If I was Pierre Gasly, I would be very excited about this. The Mercedes engine and gearbox, but I'd be very excited about almost dropping it through the exit of turn 13 firstly. But the Mercedes engine and gearbox that I've been waiting for through all the pain of last year, which is supposed to be the hot ticket through this year, has arrived. In the back of the Alpine, they've got a new aerodynamic concept and it's a clean slate. And surely there must have been moments when difficult times were coming in 2025 where he just thought, it's okay, we're going to turn up in 26 with a really strong PU and we're going to be back in the hunt again.
I spoke to him about this in Sao Paulo, when he turns up in Sao Paulo and just has a terrific time no matter what he's driving, no matter what type of year he's having. But earlier in that weekend, I had a chat to him about his responsibility as team leader, and he said it's just very, very important not to worsen team morale. There's a lot of people that he's at the head of, and all with a view to the year that he's now in, all to a view with the power unit he was going to get. And there are plenty in the paddock that expect Alpine to take a step forward this year. But you could say that about nearly every team out there, apart from McLaren, reigning world champions, with back-to-back titles secured and their first drivers' championship since 2008. Looking at the Red Bull powertrains and Ford collaboration powered, you see the logo there at the back of the car, back in Formula One, and Max Verstappen with new power behind him as he heads to turn number 4. He is on his 131st lap of the circuit.
It's a good effort. It's a good effort for the first day of testing, and they'll be delighted with that. Red Bull Ford collaboration looks, from the arrangement of the vent, see that massive great vent in the airbox there, in comparison to the scoops in the side pods, like it might be a bit of a different arrangement as well in the rear of that machine to some of the other cars. But you're hearing good noises, aren't you, about this Red Bull Ford power unit? And Max will be looking to extract everything that he possibly can. 34.6, by the way, best time at the moment. That's been achieved by Lando Norris. The car that you're looking at has done a 34.8. To give you a sense of where that stands, decent race lap last year, 35.1. Pole for this Grand Prix last year, for what it's worth, was a 29.8. So those are your, well, they're not your benchmarks, but there's some time.
There's some references for you. As Max Verstappen gets very loose around the final corner of the racetrack, and in straight mode takes it over the line. Second fastest time. That was an improvement on his best. He's done a 1:34.798. Remains in second place, 131 laps on the board as he goes into recharge mode. And you can see the comparison between the top two in the World Championship from last year and the top two on your testing graphic with 5 minutes to go on the first day of the first test in Bahrain.
And the Norris on the C2 specification of tyre, one of the 5 for this year. The very softest compound in Formula One has been dropped. They'll all change anyway because they're in their construction, because they're a different size. But in terms of the gradation of the tyres available, there will be C135.
We're on board with Charles Leclerc. He's made his way through turn 4 and 5 and catches.
Come back, I didn't mean it. Through the, and he's been struggling in there all day long. It's going to be a factor, especially here in Bahrain. It's a great test track for the drivers to use, because less rear tyre on the racetrack means that they will heat up still faster. Add a little bit of instant torque from a very powerful electric motor, and managing those rear tyres throughout a lap is going to be as much of a factor as it ever was or more this year. There's a torque limit to the amount that they're allowed to put down on the road, 500 Newton meters, for what that's worth.
You know we're coming back on day 3, right?
We are. Yeah. I'll tell them again.
Well, I thought you were just emptying the bag with everything, every number that you had. Tomorrow, David Croft, Anthony Davidson, taking you through the final hour of day 2, and then, I don't know, Crofty has a Pilates class on Friday, but we'll be back for day 3, and we will be talking you through the final hour and summarising everything that we've seen, as it's a classic Antonelli esports line, sim racing line through there. Now let's listen in, see if we can hear any of the weird and wonderful noises. Well, we gave it a go. A practice start for Esteban Ocon. He disappears. We'll have a listen in.
Can we hear the noises was the question? No.
Don't ask questions in the opening hour. Basics. He says it himself.
The indicator lights, also indicator style lights on the side of the wing mirrors.
Not actual indicator lights.
No, but
just to be clear.
I learned they have a hazard function when I think it's Franco Colapinto stopped.
Yeah.
Earlier on.
Yeah, saw it with Hulkenberg as well when he pulled over just before turn 14. Spin for Lewis Hamilton at turn 1. Lockups are plenty into turn 10, and turn 1 have been the order of the day. Hulkenberg came to a halt, so did Franco Colapinto in the Alpine, but plenty of running. Lando Norris has done 54 laps. Max Verstappen, 133. 76 laps for Charles Leclerc. The Ferrari looks a handful through 6 and 7. The fast sweepers that right now Kimi Antonelli is heading to. Esteban Ocon's done 112 laps for Haas. Earlier on today, 54 laps for Oscar Piastri. It was 56 laps for George Russell earlier on. This morning, Lewis Hamilton again ran in the morning session. He did 52. Pierre Gasly out there at the moment has just set a personal best. He's done 47 laps, 8th fastest. Nico Hulkenberg did 70. And then it is Alex Albon competing the top 10, currently in the pits, but Williams at this event and believe they can make up for lost time. James Vale's joining us in a few moments' time. He's done 68 laps, Alex Albon. There is the rest of the lap count. I was doing it off the old school screen. You've been looking at it the whole time.
Takeaways, astonishing reliability, in my opinion. from the cars out there on track, considering they have had a shakedown, of course, but this is day one. We're all out there, 1 minute to go, with multiple cars on track and many leaving the pit lane, pounding around. Cars are representative in terms of speed out there on track with what we've seen in previous years, and it looks like racing, doesn't it? It really does look like racing. So it's a step forward into a brave new world, but drivers are being challenged with the balance of the car, and the cars look great, don't they, under the lights out on track.
Yeah, more alive, more nimble. The shorter wheelbase, slightly thinner compared to last year. The weight reduction as well. Eventually everyone will hit the weight reduction. There are some teams slightly more light than others at this stage of the campaign. As Kimi Antonelli continues on, assessing the dirty air of the pass in front. And we're into the final 10 seconds. It's gone just like that. But I hope you've enjoyed a first live look at the cars in 2026. As everyone completes their final allotted laps of the day. Frankie Colapinto coming to a halt earlier on, the fewest on the board with 28. We showed you that earlier. And the checkered flag is waving. Ready to receive those still out on the circuit. Antonelli with huge expectations. Really not turning form after getting a little bit lost with the various updates to the Mercedes, certainly around the Belgian and Italian Grand Prix. He was wondering whether it was going to work, whether he was cut out for the elite level, the doubts of a rookie season. He was open about that. Came on really strong at the end of the year. Astonishing performance in Las Vegas. Brilliant battling in Sao Paulo as well. Here's the driver that they're trying to take the crown from. Lando Norris going to finish top of the pile. Set his time on the C2. But again, testing time's more about mileage. It's more about understanding how to deploy your energy, how to understand the systems underneath you, and as a feature to watch what iteration the cars are in at this stage. Audi, a lot of chat about them today with those new side pods brought from a clear difference from the shakedown to the first day of testing in Bahrain. Is over the line to complete his early evening's work, 1 minute past 7 local time in Sakir. This is the season that we have in front of us. The season opener in Australia, and then the first sprint of the year in China. It's then Japan, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and the USA. The change in the calendar sees that Canada moves to the 7th Grand Prix of the year, then the first European round in Monaco, Spain, Austria, Great Britain, and Belgium, Budapest, and the Netherlands, then Monza, and a new event. We're looking forward to our first trip to Madrid in the Formula One World Championship, the Mad Ring, which is going to be our host for round 16, and then it's on to Azerbaijan, Singapore, the USA with the fabulous event in Austin, then Mexico City, Sao Paulo, Las Vegas for our third trip to the USA, and then the closing events, Qatar and Abu Dhabi, to close out the season on the 6th of December. And how different will those cars look by the time that we get to the final round? It's going to be an epic season. So much to enjoy. The sprint races as well. The 24 Grand Prix around the world as we look to crown our champion constructor and driver of the world. Well, thank you for joining us on this final hour. Here's how day one looks. It's Lando Norris ahead of Max Verstappen, and then Charles Leclerc ahead of Esteban Ocon. Oscar Piastri in P5. There's George Russell ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Pierre Gasly ahead of Nico Hülkenberg, who did come to a halt on the circuit earlier on. Alexander Albon finds himself in 10th position. Kimi Antonelli, we've been watching him a lot very lively behind the wheel of the Mercedes so far. Arvid Lundblad, the rookie in the field this year, found himself out earlier on. He finishes 12th in classification. And to round out the runners, it's Carlos Sainz, Sergio Perez, Gabriel Bortoleto, Valtteri Bottas, Lance Stroll, and stopping on track earlier on, Franco Colapinto. We will wait to see Isaac Hadjar, Fernando Alonso, Liam Lawson, and Oliver Behrman behind the wheel tomorrow.
So what a day of pre-season testing we have had, and it's been lovely to have your company. Day number 2 will continue as well tomorrow from same time, 4:10 Australian Eastern Daylight Time. That should be fun, and we're excited to see you again tomorrow. Till then, it's goodbye.